Today we have bad news for the boomers. Your pensions are toast. They're empty. And the reason is what was happening in the pensions was Wall Street was helping themselves. So people say, oh, I have a good Wall Street broker. I said, well, they're stealing from you. And this book proves it here. You know, my friends who became pilots for United Airlines, after we came back from Vietnam, they found out their pensions were looted also. So I have many classmates, this is very personal to me, that as they retired, they found out their pension was stolen. So instead of a Lehman Brothers moment, we're going to have a pension movement. But also throughout the world right now, interest rates are being raised, stock markets are crashing all over the world, and the baby boomer generation is now saying, how do I retire? But more important, it's not just the baby boomer, it's the children of the baby boomers. What happens when mommy and daddy cannot afford to support themselves anymore? Social Security America's gone. What happened in 2008, which caused the hot air balloon to be blown up, you know, Ben Bernanke was our Fed chairman, Federal Reserve Bank chairman. They printed, when the economy collapsed in 2008, they called the Lehman Brothers moment, and Lehman Brothers went down. My prediction is we're going to call it the pension moment, because pensions all over the world are empty. And every time Jay Powell, head of the Federal Reserve Bank, pumps more money out there, the more dangerous it gets for people. And when they raise interest rates, the stock market comes down. So I'm saying this to all the baby boomers, the old guys my age. You know, if you're born between 1964 and 1950 something, that your pensions are gone. Your 401k is toast. And people are still saving dollars. And I think what's going to happen, Jay, is when people find out their pensions are gone, this is all over the world, I think the Federal Reserve banks, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, they're going to have to start printing even more money to cover, to make sure the old guys, baby boomers, have some kind of money to retire. So that's why when I saw gold top 2,000, I said, I better get off my butt, because the first one I ever bought was $50. So what I paid $50 for back in 1972 is now worth $2,000. What does that projecting forward another 10 years mean? So all the old guys, the boomers, are scrambling around. Our Social Security is bankrupt. And I think the majority of baby boomers, my U.S. baby boomers, are counting on Social Security, and it's bankrupt.
Yeah.
So as a Canadian looking down on the 48 or 50 states here, what do you see going on in the U.S. economy? Because you see it from the same point of view I do. But would you trust the U.S. dollar and the U.S. stock market right now?
No, God, no, absolutely not. And if I were to make any projections about how the remainder of this decade will play out, it's how the first few years have played out. It's been this increased unpredictable chaos and volatile scenarios, and I think that party's honestly just getting started. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. Like I'm long human ingenuity. I think that we're a very impressive species and we'll always find solutions, but there's going to be some very challenging years ahead. You know, your pension scenario is really interesting to me because I'm very curious how that's going to play out. It's like the ultimate example of how counterparty risk can go very, very poorly when you put the trust of your retirement in somebody else's hands. What happens if they can't deliver on that? And yeah, Canada's in the same scenario. We'll print to try to solve that problem, right? To give our civilians something to retire on. But when you're dependent on somebody else to finance the balance of your life, that's a very, very uncertain situation. And right now, I'm sure the numbers are the same in Canada. I'm actually more familiar with the United States, but it's like 1/3 of people have zero savings they can retire on. Another third have extraordinarily limited that would require them to reduce the standard of their living in retirement. That's a lot of people. And that's going to be a lot of angry people because they were sold a story that now can't be delivered, right? And so, you look at all the expressions of civil unrest that have occurred over the last 3 years, it's just getting a bit more heated. And this is a really big one. This is a really significant one. I don't know how it's solved. It's terrifying to me. I'm glad that you brought it up. I feel really fortunate that I can maybe I can sort of see this coming right now. And I feel really fortunate that I guess at a young age was introduced to concepts like precious metals and personal sovereignty and a bit more of a libertarian mindset, because I think that is spreading right now. And it's really positive that it's spreading because people need to take control.
Right now, I think the end is near. The interest in precious metals is increasing because people can see that gondola is losing air right now. And my generation, with the first generation, what we call a 401k, in Canada it's called an RRSP. But basically, exactly as Jay says, you're putting your future retirement in the hands of somebody else. And our central banks are printing that. That's what just happened in England, right? They had to reverse and start printing again because their pensions were going broke. So this whole thing goes back to my generation. This who stole my pension is that my generation, boomer generation, is the first one that's dependent upon the stock market for their retirement. Up to then, if I worked for Ford Motor Company was in charge of my retirement. But what happened in 1974, corporate America and corporations all over the world, so we don't want to handle the retirement of old guys, the boomers. So we're going to put it in the hands of the boomer themselves. But the trouble is, my generation has no financial education. Neither does yours really either. And they started saving money. The government prints it. They save stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And as every time they raise interest rates, the stock market crashes. If you knew how close we are, instead of a Lehman Brothers moment, we're going to have a pension moment, which came out it started in 1974. All these pension stuff started to happen.